Hey everyone, it's your boy Cam here, and I'm back again with part 2 of Jon Snow's father theory. When we last left off, I mentioned that Rhaegar Targaryen could not possibly be Jon Snow's father for the sheer fact that it would be out of character for Rhaegar to simply either kidnap a woman or take her because he fell in love with her at first sight. We hear about his nobility and honor from many characters in the books and the show, so it would be very strange for such an honorable man to either kidnap or besmirch his honor of marriage to take some random girl he met once. So if not Rhaegar, then who could it possibly be? Well, if we want to pick that apart, we're going to have to look at certain things, people, time, history, and we're going to have to pick that apart to find out how, why, when, and where Lyanna Stark got pregnant. So, where else to start than from the end? We will work our way back from there. We look at Jon Snow. We know Jon Snow was born in 283 at the Tower of Joy at the end of Robert Baratheon's rebellion. A rebellion for which lasted almost a year. Now for you sticklers out there, yes, I said almost a year. Here's the problem. It is impossible to find exactly how long Robert's rebellion lasted. The only evidence you can find are brief moments of timeline, but without concrete timelines and dates and months, it is impossible to tell how long a war lasts. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Why would it even matter? Well, the reason why the length of the war matters is because we have to look at Jon Snow's pregnancy. Think about it. Lyanna was pregnant with Jon Snow in the Tower of Joy. She gives birth, and then Jon Snow is taken by Ned Stark home. But the thing is, pregnancies take a long time. In fact, on average, a full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks. Not 9 months like everyone has come to know. 40 weeks, or 9 to 10 months, is more likely. I know some of you out there with neonatal knowledge will come to me and say, but what if Jon Snow wasn't a full-term pregnancy? There are preterm pregnancies, which are pregnancies that do not make it to full term. What if Jon Snow was a preemie? He could have been a 20-weeker or a 30-weeker, not a 40-weeker. Well, here's what I have to say to you. Now, for those of you who do not know, I do have some knowledge in this because my mother is a nurse practitioner in the NICU, a special division of hospitals that are dedicated to babies, specifically sick babies. Sick babies that more often than not are preemies. And that's important because we have to look at the time of the show taking place. The closest thing we can relate it to is medieval times for us here in our world. So you take that and their knowledge of medicine. It is very hard to believe that if Jon Snow is a preemie, he would be able to make the trek from the Tower of Joy to Winterfell. And it would make more sense that if he was a full-term baby with less ability to contract illness than a preemie, that would make Lyanna Stark's pregnancy at least 9.5 months. So it is safe to believe that if Robert Baratheon's war lasted almost a year and Lyanna Stark was pregnant for almost a year, then it is highly likely that she may have been pregnant before the war actually took place. But let's take a step back. Let's look at Lyanna for a second there. The only thing we know for a fact about Lyanna Stark is she was at the tourney of Harrenhal in year 281. She disappeared in 282, about a year later, and that gap of time, there's no evidence for accountability of where she was. That means for a year, we have no idea where she was. So we know she was missing at 282, where she was supposedly kidnapped by Rhaegar, Hightower, and Arthur Dayne in the Riverlands. We know that she was kidnapped from the Riverland. Not River Run, but the lands surrounding River Run. So the question lies, why was she in River Run? And where was she in that year period of time that we do not know? And also, Why was she taken? We have to solve this. And would you believe me, folks, if I said the reason why she was in the Riverlands, the reason why she was kidnapped or just picked up, and the missing time of that year all relates to who Jon Snow's father is? Because, folks, I know who Jon Snow's father is. Jon Snow's father is none other than the Mad King Aerys. Now hold up. Put down your pitchforks. Put out the torches. You can't flame me in the comments just yet, folks. Because this is not just backward ass theory that I came up with on a Saturday afternoon, just out of sheer boredom. Out of multiple weeks of researching, I have no doubt in my mind that it has to be Aerys Targaryen. And let me explain to you why. In order to do so, though, we have to look at what Aerys was, not what the show portrays him. We need to look at the books and how Aerys actually was. So, to start off, we know that Aerys married his sister. He was described that in his youth, he was generous, charming, handsome, but he had a quick temper. He would often get jealous, and at times he was considered cruel. We know that for a long time he was friends with Tywin Lannister and Steffon Baratheon. We know that when he became king, he named Tywin Lannister his hand, and over the years, he slowly fell to madness. And he fell to madness not just because of old age or the Targaryen bloodlines being corrupted, but because of other things. For instance, he had many stillborns with his wife, and in an event called the Defiance of Duskendale, he was held prisoner for over half a year. Now, these simple events, while to a normal person would not create insanity, to someone who has corrupted bloodlines like the Targaryens through inbreeding, those traits of being quick-tempered and jealous and cruel become amplified, thus creating the madness we know of the Mad King. But anyway, we look at Aerys, a man who's lost children, a man who was held captive. He started becoming paranoid, distrustful with people, and sadistic when it came to punishments for his enemies. He would burn them alive just for the fun of it. And when it comes to ruling a kingdom, people start looking to other people as the real rulers of a kingdom. During King Aerys' rule, the 7 kingdoms were believed to be prosperous. They grew. So how can kingdoms grow if the king is crazy? Well, they started putting that together, and they figured out that Tywin, with his brute force, with his wits, was the real one to control the kingdom. And that made Aerys paranoid of his friend, the friend he grew up with. And what ended up happening is, to ring him in, he took his soon-to-be wife, Joanna Lannister, and raped her. Aerys had been known to take women in order to control men. He would take loved ones and rape them just to keep people in line. And Tywin was no different. And just to spit in his face, he bragged about it to him. The madness started to get worse. He started making promises he couldn't keep. Ones he would forget and or otherwise be so insane no one would possibly do it. I mean, the man threatened to wage war on the Iron Bank of Braavos, and then later retracted it, but it takes either balls or insanity to take on the Iron Bank. Slowly, Aerys started to become more and more insane, to the point where he could not get aroused unless it was by watching someone burn. By the time the tourney of Harrenhal came around, he made Tywin's life so miserable that Tywin resigned as Hand of the King. When Tywin was gone, Rhaegar became the focus of Aerys' wrath and paranoia. But it was not without reason, because while the king was known for taking out his anger on people, he usually believed that there was a reason why the person deserved it. And he believed that his son deserved it as well. For instance, when the tourney of Harrenhal was created, Varys told King Aerys that he had to attend the tourney of Harrenhal. Even though he didn't trust anyone there, he had to attend because Rhaegar was planning to revolt, and he was using the tourney of Harrenhal as a ruse to meet with the great lords of the north to gain their trust in order to overthrow King Aerys. So King Aerys started to speculate that the entire thing was being funded by Rhaegar in order to attract more lords to it. So Aerys realized that he had to attend. So he does. And to the Mad King's dismay, years and years of mistreating himself, from not cutting his hair, to not cutting his beard, to being afraid of sitting on the Iron Throne because the cuts it would make as he sat in it, to never cutting his nails, the king, at the mere age of 40, looked like he was 80, gross and decrepit. And the people of the tourney picked up on it. They started laughing, behind the king's back, but laughing at him all the same. He started hearing people berate the king's appearance while complimenting Rhaegar's appearance, while complimenting Rhaegar's ability to prove himself in the tournament. This made Aerys' paranoia even worse. And so, here's where I believe started a plot to control Rhaegar and the North all in one. Alright, well, I've pulled you along a rope of history and facts for long enough, and I feel like it's time to get to the meat of this theory. The reason how and why Aerys is Jon Snow's real father. So let's think about it. Aerys believed that Rhaegar tried to overthrow him, gathering men, gathering houses, great lords, the Starks, everyone, to overthrow him. The roses that he gave to the Starks were a symbol or a way of winning over Lyanna Stark and the rest of them as well. He saw it as defiance, a besmirchment on King Aerys' good name. And in order to control his son, he raped Lyanna Stark. But how could he? Well, I believe that after the tourney of Harrenhal, he offered to take Lyanna Stark as a lady-in-waiting for his wife. For those of you who don't know, lady-in-waitings are people that follow and care for ladies of houses in order to prepare for marriage and being their own lady. He offered her an opportunity in King's Landing to be lady-in-waiting for the queen. However, due to increasing tension between him and his son, he started feeling that he had to control his son in some way. So while she was there, he decided to do what he's done before and take the woman he believed Rhaegar actually loved. And then, just like that, Lyanna was pregnant. Lyanna panics. She's just been raped by the king. What can she do? Well, what we can do is we can look at characters that we know and see how they would act. The character that Lyanna Stark is most affiliated with is Arya. It's described that Arya has Lyanna's energy, Lyanna's personality. So it's highly likely that she would have tried to leave the capital. I mean, who would believe that the king raped her? And even if they did, what could they do? So she left to go to the only place she knows she could be safe, by her brother's side at his wedding in Riverrun. She doesn't send word because she knows that it'll be intercepted and they'll know where she's heading. So she heads out in the night on her way to Riverrun. Aerys then commands Rhaegar, who had just came in from Dragonstone, to go retrieve her. Rhaegar finds out about the wedding and finds out that would be the most important place for her to go, place she would be safe, and heads out to find her. Eventually he finds her in the Riverlands, tells her, "You have to come with me." She simply says to him, "I can't go back. Your father raped me. I'll never go back. He's a monster." He realizes what his father's done, and by his own guilt, because of what he did at the tourney of Harrenhal and the way he treated her, that this was his fault. So he promises her to take her somewhere safe because he knows. So he says, "I'll take you somewhere safe. Don't worry. We'll wait this out and everyone will forget about it and you'll be safe." Instead of taking her back to King's Landing like he was supposed to, he takes her down to his wife's land, Dorne, at the Tower of Joy, somewhere where she could be safe and have her baby, and then choose what she wanted to do with it. So, that's what I believe happened. And it is possible that Rhaegar actually did intend to overthrow his father. And by saving Lyanna, by even saying possibly that he would claim the child, he would claim it as his bastard, it would save her honor, and she could be sent home to her brothers safely. But we all know that that doesn't work. We all know what happens to Lyanna. We know about Robert Baratheon's rebellion, and we know that all of them die before they can tell their story. But there's still some questions that need to be answered. Why did that have to happen? Everything could have worked it out perfectly. He could have taken the child as his own, saving her honor, communed with the Starks, worked together with them, overthrown the Mad King, and with Targaryen at their back, Rhaegar could rule the Seven Kingdoms as a good king. So what went wrong? Why did the Starks jump to a conclusion in saying that he kidnapped her? How did they find out? It's unknown who tells them. All we know is someone sees them take off together, and it is said that he kidnapped her. Well, we had to find out who told them. Who would have the motive to tell someone that they got kidnapped and start a rebellion against the crown for it? Who would have anything to gain? Certainly not the Starks. They lost a sister and a daughter. Certainly not the Targaryens. The Tullys, possibly if they saw it and misunderstood. But no, I feel like the person who truly profited from this is the one who always profits in chaos. Peter Baelish. Now I know what you're thinking. How could it possibly be Baelish? We haven't heard anything of Baelish. We don't know how he was involved, and he would have been barely an adult when all this took place. Well, actually, that's the most amazing thing. The timelines work out perfectly for him to be the person who told everyone that Lyanna was kidnapped. 17 years before the events of the show and the books, Baelish was simply a ward to Catelyn Tully's father, Hoster Tully. He bonded with Catelyn, fell in love with her, and when Brandon Stark was promised, he challenged him to a duel, and he lost very, very badly. Brandon then headed up a long travel to meet up with his father, who was on his way down with the wedding party. During that time, Baelish healed. Catelyn took care of him, but eventually, when Baelish had his strength, he was kicked out of Riverrun for dishonoring the Tully name. So, Baelish is kicked out of Riverrun. He's angry at the Starks. He's angry at the Tullys. He's in love with Catelyn, and no one understands. And then he runs into a Stark who's fleeing, panic in her eyes, probably disguised, on her way to Riverrun. He finds out by her panicked expression that something went wrong. She tells him, "The king raped me. He's coming after me. I'm not safe. I need to find my father and my brother. They're the only ones that can keep me safe." Baelish calms her down and says, "I remember you. I was at the tourney of Harrenhal when Rhaegar gave you that crown of roses. I remember you. And I ward to Hoster Tully. Brandon Stark is on his way down for the wedding. They'll be here in a fortnight. Stay somewhere safe with me. I'll keep you out of harm's way until they get here. And when they get here, you'll be safe." He hides her away, but then Rhaegar's right behind her. Rhaegar asks, "Have you seen her?" He says, "Yes, I found her. I know exactly where she is, and I have her for you. The Starks will be angry if they find out. You need to take her somewhere safe. It's not safe up here. Your father knows where she is." He says, "Thank you, my lord." He says, "I'm not a lord. I'm just a ward." Rhaegar takes Lyanna from her safety. Lyanna panics, says, "You're with him." He says, "No. I know what my father did to you. I will take you to safety. My wife has a place in Dorne where we could hide away, and I could claim the child as my own, so not take your honor away. Then, once we have our forces, both your forces and my forces can wage war on my father. we will take the Iron Throne away from him, and you will get justice for what he has done. She finally gives in, says, yes, okay, I'll go with you, if it's really safe. Rhaegar thanks Baelish, not knowing of an oncoming lie that he'll tell. He says, make sure to tell the Starks that I did this to protect her. And Baelish says to him, of course, it is my duty. However, as Rhaegar leaves, Baelish sends letter to Brandon Stark, who is about to arrive in Riverrun, and he sends word to Baratheon that Rhaegar had kidnapped Lyanna. He saw her forcefully on his horse, taken away. Brandon, enraged, heads down to King's Landing to confront Rhaegar, who's not there. King Aerys, because he does not know that his son betrayed him yet, kills Brandon Stark and Rickon Stark, declaring war. Robert's rebellion starts. The son who only thing he wanted was peace, an alliance between the North, the South, the East, and the West, to take out a truly mad king, died by the hand of the person he was trying to gain favor with. Died by a hammer strike. And Lyanna, dying after giving birth, never got the chance to explain what happened. Baelish is the only person who knows what really happened. And he knew that the Starks would immediately jump to conclusions and agree with him. For what has he said in the show?
The Starks. Quick tempers, slow minds.
And through this, he gains revenge on the man who would have taken his lover away, only to get his lover taken away again by a younger man, Ned Stark. But what does all this mean? Surely, if it's possible, what difference does it make if it's Rhaegar's or Aerys? That means Jon Snow was still a Targaryen. Why is it important that he be the king's son, not the prince's? Well, if you believe another theory called the Three Dragons, then we know that Daenerys is a dragon. We believe that Jon Snow is a dragon. And another theory states that when King Aerys took Joanna Lannister, 9 months later, she gave birth and died to a dwarf named Tyrion Lannister. So you have 3 dragons, 2 secret Targaryens, and 1 real Targaryen. Why is it important that King Aerys would have been Jon Snow's father? Well, it would make more sense that it would be a brother, a sister, and another brother, rather than a nephew. But if you don't believe me, believe the writer. Look at George R. R. Martin. How often are his stories straightforward? How often does George R. R. Martin tell you of a love story gone tragic? He doesn't. He tells you of the truth that was hidden away by a pile of lies. I would very much love it for Jon Snow to be the product of love, not rape. But if we take into effect who the writer is and the history of what we know, it makes more sense for Jon Snow's birth to be a song of lies rather than a song of love. But let me know what you guys thought of this theory down below. If you feel like I was wrong, feel free to do your own research. It was incredibly hard finding facts for certain events, timelines, and all that. But if you have an interesting theory that you have, feel free to put those down in the comments below. And like, comment, and subscribe. And once again, and as always, what's an outro?